Commanders fans, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to look at the two M's in the end zone right here. And I know what you're probably saying. You're saying, Dave, they don't look like M's. They look like W's. Do you know why they look like W's, though? Because that is where Jayden Daniels and Noah Brown got you your 6th win of the NFL season. Let's go.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Commanders fans. Thanks, as always, for joining me for today's episode of Locked On Commanders, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com, also helping out WUSA9.com's coverage of the team this season. But more importantly, I'm your eyes, your ears, and your buddy who is standing 5 feet or so, maybe about 10 feet away from where Noah Brown hauled in a Hail Mary pass from Jayden Daniels. We're going to talk about all of it going on right here. Thank you for coming through for today's episode. Everydayers, thank you for coming through for every single episode. Of course, Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. If you haven't already, please click subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. We are going to get through our 3 stars of today's game. Of course, Noah Brown, of course, Jayden Daniels are going to be in the mix, but where are they going to be in the mix? I'll tell you that coming up. We're going to talk about how the Washington Commanders advanced to 6-2 on the season, and we're going to kick it all off with some Magic in Maryland. Shout out to my good buddy Insider Mark for giving us the nickname Magic in Maryland. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And if I'm a little bit amped up, ladies and gentlemen, that is how much energy has been coursing through this stadium ever since about 5 seconds left in the game. Everybody pretty much packing up. Everybody pretty much saying, it's been a good season, but this is one of those here we go again moments where the Washington Commanders are going to squander away what should have been a victory. And then Jayden Daniels scrambling around, running around. I heard the Jim Nantz call. I heard the Bram Weinstein call from the team broadcast. Heard it all. Running around, scrambling around, getting set, throwing the ball up. Noah Brown brings in the 50-plus yard. It was actually thrown from the 35-yard line. So officially, it's a little over 50 yards for a touchdown, but it's actually much longer than that. 18-15. And if you're stat box watching, if you're box score watching, you're going to go 18-15. Yuck. What a disgusting game. And in some ways, okay, maybe it was. But 18-15, one of the most exhilarating football moments I have ever had the pleasure of putting my eyes on. And I will tell you right now, with no shame, there were people in that press box breaking press box rule. There's no reactions. There's no outbursts allowed in the press box, ladies and gentlemen. But guess what? That press box is a little bit different when that pass went down. Chicago media for one reason, Washington media for another reason. You don't got to be a fan of a team to be a fan of great football plays, and that was a great football moment. Talked to a lot of players in the locker room after the game, including Terry McLaurin, including Frankie Louvu, including Jeremy Reeves, who you all know puts his emotion, puts his heart, puts his intent behind everything he does. I had a really good conversation with Jeremy off the record. Then we also had a really good conversation on the record. I've got that recorded for you. We're going to drop all of that on Monday, so make sure you keep it up with that. But the basic bottom line takeaway from talking to Jeremy, talking to some of these other guys, and the takeaway that I want to share with Commanders fans here as we all kind of revel in the amazing occurrence that just happened on Sunday night is that good things happen to good teams. Luck, there is a little bit of an element of luck to almost everything that you do in life that's successful, but luck is also a byproduct of preparation. And you're going to hear Terry McLaurin, if you come back through tomorrow for those interviews that I'll be dropping on the interview playlist on the Locked On Commanders YouTube page, you're going to hear Terry McLaurin talk about how they practice this. They practice exactly what they just did on a regular basis. You've heard us talk about to you, local media members talk to you guys about watching them practice 2-minute drills, end of half scenarios, end of game scenarios over and over and over again during training camp. You've heard your head coach, Dan Quinn, talk about practicing those scenarios over and over again during game preparation. You heard Dan Quinn earlier this week talk about if Jayden Daniels has to miss a couple days of practice and still has to play, it's not the end of the world because there are unscouted looks. There are things that they've installed and practiced over and over and over again that they haven't unveiled in games. And he even mentioned to us, the local media that were in attendance, said, you guys have seen things that we installed back in training camp that we haven't unveiled yet in an actual game. And I can confirm to you that that is, in fact, fact. That preparation is what ultimately leads to these types of things. Because raise your hand if you're one of the people across the world, across the country, watching this game or in the stadium watching this game. We were watching Jayden Daniels scrambling around saying, dude, you got to throw the ball. Raise your hand if that was you, because I was one of them. I'll tell you, there was plenty of other ones. And I can tell you, listen to Jim Nantz even. He didn't say it, but you almost hear it in his voice. He's like, Jayden Daniels scrambling. We're going to extend this a little bit longer. He's basically saying in his tone of voice, dude, Jayden, throw the ball. And what you don't want to see, what you never want to see, is the end of a game scenario, Hail Mary scenario, where a quarterback takes a sack, right? That's definitely what you don't want to see, especially when your quarterback is coming off of an injury. So to see him scramble around, do that kind of stuff, set up his platform, get his base under him, and then fire the ball, there's a reason behind it. There's a purpose behind it. That purpose comes from that preparation. That preparation leads to the opportunity to execute things like this. Now, do you need the ball to bounce the right way? Absolutely. Do you need a dummy? And I'm sorry, I try not to do this, but I'm going to be disrespectful to Tyreek Stevenson, Chicago Bears defensive back, because not here, but about 50 or so feet, 50 meters, well, not 25 meters or so, to my right, your left, if you're looking at me, he was over here mocking y'all. He was over here mocking Washington Commanders fans, thinking that he and his team were about to carry a W in their carry-on baggage on their way back to Chicago. Well, Tyreek Stevenson is somewhere in the air right now on his way back to Chicago with a big fat L packed in that carry-on. And part of the reason is because he wasn't prepared. He would rather talk trash to Commanders fans, to people who, you've all heard the whole, lion don't worry about the opinion of sheep and all that stuff. But really what it comes down to is the man in the arena, right? The man in the arena, the warrior, the combatant, doesn't worry about the opinion of the people watching necessarily. Tyreek Stevenson would rather focus on you than focus on the competitors on the field, especially number 85, Noah Brown. And what ends up happening, if you go watch, there was a great clip of it taken by a Commanders fan. I'm so glad he thought to bring his phone out. I wish I had his Twitter handle off the top of my head, but I don't, so I apologize. But please go find it, because it's an amazing video. I love it. I can't wait for former players who are now in the media to rip him to shreds, because it's absolutely what should and will happen. But he's over here talking trash to Commanders fans. The ball gets snapped. He's still talking trash to Commanders fans. Then he says, okay, I'll go get involved in this Hail Mary. The ball gets thrown. He runs over, jumps up, doesn't try to knock the ball down. No. Doesn't try to knock the ball down, which, going back to the Pee-wee, I mean, the earliest stages of tackle football, what do you do in a Hail Mary? You knock the ball down. You don't knock the ball up. You don't try to tip it. You don't try to catch it. You knock the ball down. What does Tyreek Stevenson go and do? He goes up. He reaches up, tips it, goes up in the air, right in the hands of Noah Brown. Karma, instant karma in its finest, ladies and gentlemen. It couldn't happen to a better guy than Tyreek Stevenson. That's all I'm going to say, because hopefully Tyreek Stevenson is actually a really good dude and bounces back from this and doesn't deserve all the backlash that's about to happen, but he deserves the backlash that's about to happen today, because he is part of the reason the Washington Commanders walk away with an 18-15 win over the Chicago Bears. They needed that win because the Cincinnati Bengals couldn't do their stinking job and beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Instead, they lose by double digits. I think it was like 20-point margin of victory for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Philadelphia Eagles keeping pace in the NFC East, but because the Washington Commanders come away with the win here tonight, still first place in the NFC East Division, and we're headed to New Jersey next weekend for a date with the New York Giants. Washington Commanders trying to go 2-0 inside the division, also trying to go get their 7th win. Remember, guys, this team was projected to win 6.5 games to start the season. It's not even Halloween yet, and this team's already got 6. One more win exceeds that total, and you got people on Fox Sports broadcast, NFL Game Day Morning talking about, is this Washington Commanders team going to win 10 games? And when their name comes up in that conversation, you got the hosts on that panel sitting there saying, yeah, they're going to win 10 games. Don't worry about that. They're going to win 10 games. That is the new Washington Commanders. There's a media member in the press box. I'm not going to out him. It's not a bad thing, but I'm not going to say names, but was having a little bit of a reaction to the game that happened, to what just unfolded out here in Northwest Stadium. And I walked over to him and I said, welcome to new Commanders football. So Washington Commanders fans, welcome to new Commanders football. It's what you deserve. It's what you've been wanting. And we're just getting started talking about what went down here in Northwest Stadium. We've only talked about one play. It was the most important play of the day, but we're going to talk about more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks to our good buddies over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn, thank you for being here for part of this Victory Monday celebration. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the qualified professionals that are right for the role you're trying to fill. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster. And the best part is it's for free. But LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even people who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn who's also constantly trying to find new ways to make the process easier. So join 2.5 million small businesses that are using LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's Locked On Commanders episode, Victory Monday live episode from Northwest Stadium, is brought to you by Prize Picks. And with Prize Picks, you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. I'm not going to lie to you. I had about $80 in bonus bets or bonus credits with Prize Picks coming in this week. So I laid out like 4 or 5 different lineups. I actually haven't had a chance to check them, so I'm really looking forward to seeing if I won anything or if I didn't win anything. Prize Picks, bottom line, is the best way to get into action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And if you sign up today, you'll get a $50 bonus instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win. When you play that $5, you get that $50 bonus guaranteed. So you cook up your hot takes with your friends. You win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Continuing now with today's live Victory Monday episode. We are here on the surface of Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland, Greater Landover, Maryland. Thank you for joining me for this live Victory Monday episode. And I mean, listen, have you ever seen a more beautiful set of letters? The Washington Commanders winning this game on a Hail Mary pass. If you want to get even more out of Locked On Commanders, all you got to do is become a Locked On Commanders insider. To do that, you go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Become an insider today, and you will be getting texts like me. I don't usually text in all caps, but I did tonight. So I texted all caps when the play happened. Guys, I can't even lie to you. I got to be completely transparent. I was packing up my stuff, getting ready to go downstairs, be like, man, this locker room is going to suck. Man, these press conferences are going to suck. I was like, it's cold out here, and it is cold out here. It didn't get warm just because they won. It is cold out here. But I was thinking about asking my insiders, like, hey, man, y'all mind if I just drive home and do this episode from my office? Because I really just want to get out of here right now. But the energy was low. And I'll be honest with you, I think the whole stadium was basically a bunch of tension, right? It was a bunch of tension about, here we go again. Like, let's be honest. It was a here we go again moment. Hopefully you were fighting it, saying, okay, maybe it's just a one-off for this group, right? But you can't lie and say it wasn't a here we go moment. Talking to Jeremy Reeves after the game, I mentioned this before, and he flat out said to us, man, 2 years ago, this win doesn't happen. And I've heard that so many times from fans, from you guys this year, that last year, this win doesn't happen. 2 years ago, that win doesn't happen, or that play doesn't happen. And you're right. But it's a different team. It's a different era. And again, if you want to get text messages from me while you're watching it, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to try it out for the first 2 weeks. If you're an audio listener, appreciate all of you, video and audio. Obviously, if you're on audio, you can't see what I'm saying. Take a look at, but you can find the play on Twitter. You can find the play on any NFL highlight show. I guarantee it. Look at where Noah Brown caught the pass. We were standing literally right outside those 2 M's in the Commanders logo in the end zone. The Commanders had to do 3 things to win this game. These are things that we lined up in our crossover Thursday episode this last week with Locked On Bears host Lauren Cox. Again, one of my favorite hosts on this network. He's a great dude. Really feel bad for him having to do this episode, but I've been on your side of this coin here, Lauren. So it's your turn, buddy. We got 3 things that they had to do. First must do, contain Caleb Williams, collapse the pocket. Second must do, maximize turnover-worthy plays. Third must do, run the ball. We're going to start right there. I said I wanted to see the combination of Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, the running backs, get at least 26 carries in this game. Wouldn't be mad with 28, wouldn't be mad with 30. Wanted to see them get at least 26 carries in the game. Well, they got 24. And you know what? I mean, obviously, I'm going to be okay with that. I'm not going to try to sit here and be like, they almost wasted it away because they didn't listen to me, because that's not necessarily the case. But still, overall, ran the ball effective enough that you didn't allow the Chicago Bears defense to kind of try to get one-dimensional, right? Brian Robinson finishes 16 carries, 65 yards, 4.1 yards per carry average. Not terrible. That was Jayden Daniels. Austin Eckler, 7 carries, 52 yards, 7.4 yards per carry. There was a stretch there, and I know some Commanders fans noticed it. I noticed it. We never got any official words on an injury or anything like that, so that's kind of the best we can go off of. But there was a stretch there in the second half where Brian Robinson wasn't really on the field all that much. Now, he did end up coming back onto the field, so hopefully everything is okay there. And we'll get some, obviously we'll see if he practices fully throughout the week leading up to the Giants game, all that stuff. Jeremy McNichols only had 1 carry. He lost 1 yard on that carry. Jayden Daniels ends up running the ball 8 times for 52 yards. It's a 6.5 yards per carry average for Jayden Daniels. So running the ball effectively overall, you're talking north of 30 rushes, I should say, for the Washington Commanders. So certainly hit that number as a total group, but I was really looking to see more out of the running backs. I can't sit here right now and say like, hey, on these drives where they ran the ball with running backs 3 or more times, they got in scoring position versus the drives. I can't do that right now because I haven't had time to dive into the numbers. But basically, they got close, so we'll give it half credit, right? The second one, maximize turnover-worthy plays. Honestly, Caleb Williams, he missed on quite a few throws here today on this field. Certainly looked rattled. Certainly looked like he was a quarterback under pressure, a young rookie who was certainly feeling the tension of the moment and the pressure that the Washington Commanders defense was getting on him. The Washington Commanders defense ends up coming away with a couple of sacks here. Johnny Newton got his first career NFL sack. He also got his first career NFL takeaway. So congratulations to Johnny. Johnny definitely had a very good game. And if it wasn't for a Hail Mary game winner, would be the #1 star of today's game. Deron Payne also came up with a sack. The Deron Payne sack, of course, was quote unquote probably should have been or could have been a Frankie Louvu sack. Frankie Louvu said he doesn't care who gets credit for the sack as long as they get the sack. And of course, Frankie Louvu, you believe him when he says that kind of thing. He doesn't worry about his own personal stat box. He's caring about the team. But Frankie Louvu comes in, gets the initial pressure on Caleb Williams, ends up losing his grip on him, takes a piece of his jersey or his t-shirt with him. But ultimately, it's Deron Payne that has to clean it up and gets credit for the sack. But the turnover-worthy play or the turnover opportunity that they really had to take advantage of course, was down here. In fact, down on the other end of the field as we're talking, where the Chicago Bears were trying to get into the end zone. Caleb Williams trying to hand it off to a fullback. Not sure which of the Bears players it actually was specifically, but it was an up back, fullback type, maybe a tight end lined up as a fullback. Ends up losing the ball. It's called a fumble. It's called an aborted play, is what it was officially named. And Caleb Williams gets credit for the fumble that ends up popping right into Johnny Newton's waiting hands. And he took full advantage, ends up going down to the turf, but he ends up sprinting all the way down here where we're standing now to celebrate with you guys. Well, he was like over there somewhere, but come down to celebrate with Commanders fans, getting his first NFL takeaway of his career. So certainly taking advantage of the turnover-worthy opportunities. Like I said, Caleb Williams, when he did miss, most of his misses today were overthrows, and they were overthrown. They're basically overthrowing everybody. So certainly not a lot of interception opportunities per se for the Washington Commanders defense. So we're going to kind of give that one a push there. #1 must do, though, is contain Caleb Williams, keep him in the pocket as much as possible and collapse that pocket. And even though Caleb Williams does end up with 41 yards rushing on 10 carries, it's a 4.1 yards per carry average. You have to remember, this is a quarterback who was getting 50 yards running on defenses with 5 scrambles, 5 carries, things like that. There were a couple of design runs late in the game that the Commanders defense was able to stuff, so that was able to keep the average a little bit lower than it probably could have been. But I think overall, you come away happy with the pressure that the Washington Commanders defense was able to get on Caleb. He ends up 10 for 24, so less than a 50% per completion percentage. And like we talked about beforehand, when teams are getting pressure on him, even if he's not getting sacked, he's not completing a high rate of his passes. So that certainly reflects there. 131 yards passing, 59.5 passer rating. And it was really unfortunate because coming into the end of the game, especially as the Chicago Bears took the late lead, it was really just unfortunate hearing the national, more than anything, storylines getting ready to come out of Caleb Williams, the hero, and Caleb Williams, the #1 overall pick, vanquishing the #2 overall pick, Jayden Daniels, who just a couple of weeks ago was getting MVP buzz and all this stuff. But Caleb comes out and shows that he was the #1 quarterback, #1 pick for a reason. Look, Jayden Daniels didn't have the greatest game in the world from a pass completion percentage standpoint, right? The Chicago Bears defense certainly flexed its muscles a little bit against this Commanders offense. I think we can all admit that. Jayden Daniels, 21 of 38, but he did pass for 326 yards. Now, granted, again, 50 plus of that was on the final play, but still 280 or so, 270 yards on the day, and finishes with a 92.7 passer rating. Take off the touchdown, you're probably looking at about a 60 passer rating. So it wouldn't have been this narrative of, man, look how much better Caleb was than Jayden. But unfortunately, I feel like some national outlets would have taken that way. So I'm really glad we don't have to have that conversation. Instead, we can praise the Washington Commanders defense, who held the Chicago Bears offense to just 2 scores, right? You only had 2 scores. Now, there were 2 touchdowns, 1 fluky 50-plus yard run by DeAndre Swift. But the Washington Commanders end up constructing 5 scoring drives, really 6 scoring opportunities if you count the missed field goal by Austin Cyber, which originally was called a blocked kick, but as we watched the replays, clearly was not a blocked kick. So we get to now instead spend the next couple of days praising the defense for the overall performance. Again, late in the game, things kind of went south on them, but I think a lot of that is time of possession related as the Washington Commanders offense really sputtered in the second half. They come out punt, field goal, punt, miss field goal, punt, punt. So a lot of plays, 2, 3 and outs in the second half there. I mean, ultimately they end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 possessions in the second half. The Washington Commanders do. It shows how much they were getting off the field or how quickly they were getting off the field. And in the first half, only had 5 possessions. So that shows just a little bit of the ball control problem that led ultimately probably to some of the defensive collapses there in the late second half that allowed the Chicago Bears to get back in the game in the first place. But we don't have to talk about that because the Hail Mary happened. And we get to not necessarily wash it under the bridge because we're definitely going to talk about some of the stuff that happened this week. But we get to celebrate the victory. And as Dan Quinn always says, easier to learn and progress when you're doing it off of a win than a loss. So what's the play of the day? It's pretty simple, right? But we're going to talk about it anyway. And our 3 stars of the game as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're here on the surface of Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland, thanks to our friends over at Game Time. And Game Time has a really easier than ever before. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curated deals make it easier to find the best price on great seats. For example, my Game Time Picks tonight show me tickets to see the Pittsburgh Steelers visit the Washington Commanders for $244. This is quite the event people want to go to here in Landover these days. All-in pricing. I toggle on that all-in pricing feature on my phone, and I get my totals up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And Game Time ticket coverage provides you the greatest coverage in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying your live tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Wrapping up today's live episode of Locked On Commanders coming to you from the surface of Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland. Thank you to everybody joining me live. Thank you to everybody joining me after the live on audio, on video. However you're listening to the Locked On Commanders podcast, I appreciate you. The play of the day has to be the Hail Mary. Obviously, it's the play that ultimately won the game for the Washington Commanders. The defense deserves a lot of credit, and so we'll kind of give a play of the day alternate, a 1A, 1B play of the day to the Johnny Newton fumble recovery. Obviously, the defense didn't do a whole lot to create the fumble, but taking advantage of the opportunity, recovering the ball, still super, super important for what ended up happening here for the Washington Commanders. Another note that I want to talk about, because we are going to talk about how solid this defense really was for the greater part of the game. And if the Washington Commanders offense, is able to take advantage of the opportunities they had better, then I think this game goes much differently, and that's a big part of it. But ever since Joe Witt Jr., if you remember coming out of Baltimore, Joe Witt Jr. sat down on Thursday afternoon with us following that game for his weekly press conference and was, I would say, surprisingly still upset about what happened in Baltimore. I was not expecting him to come in there with, an angry type of approach, but he was still very visibly upset about what had happened in Baltimore. And he said there were 4 plays that he could point to for his defensive unit that cost them a win in Baltimore and that it was unacceptable. Ever since Joe Witt Jr. essentially came in and called out his own unit and said, we lost this game for this team against the Super Bowl contender, against the team that, by the way, the Cleveland Browns just beat on Sunday. Ever since then, this Washington Commanders defense has certainly picked up its production. Now, yes, they played the Carolina Panthers, and yes, the Chicago Bears are not the Baltimore Ravens, all that stuff. But it's not just the fact that plays are being made. It's the speed that they're being made. It's the effort. It's the fight in the team. I mean, and it's bleeding through not just the defense. Like we watched John Bates over here on the sideline plow through 2 Chicago Bears defensive backs, right? I dapped him up in the locker room after the game and said, hey, bro, we saw you down there bullying DBs. And he just kind of laughed and said he appreciated it. But, like, that's part of the mentality that this team is going through. So Candy Waller, Bowie TV, I want to give her a shout out. She's the one who kind of pointed it out in the press box. She sent a tweet out about it. If you don't follow her already at Seawall SE, make sure you do so. That's Seawall SE Sports Entertainment. She sent a tweet out about it, and I think she's 100% right that, Joe Witt didn't come out here and throw people under the bus. He didn't come out here and be like, oh, this guy, David Harrison, the linebacker David Harrison didn't do his job. Safety David Harrison didn't do his job. Cornerback David Harrison didn't do his job. But he basically very professionally and up front said, we are not good enough. And ever since then, I've noticed his defense has been playing with more of an effort, more cohesiveness, more like a unit. And yes, they're playing some weaker opponents. But when it's the Baltimore Ravens we're talking about, that's going to be pretty much everybody. But anyway, wanted to talk about that here a little bit too while I have your attention. 3 stars of the game. Star number 3, apologize and allow me a little bit of corniness here, ladies and gentlemen, but you guys, Commanders fans, are stars number 3. I asked Jeremy Reeves, again in our conversation, what it was like with the fans here when that moment happened. And guys, I mean, I'm loving it. I'm seeing like the upper deck has got people in it. The club level is packed. The lower bowl pretty much has always been packed, to be quite honest with you, or at least, mostly packed. But you guys are coming out in droves. It's amazing to see. Reeves said, he's like, honestly, I can't remember how loud it got, to be quite honest with you, just because he was just enveloped in it, right? And he was just enjoying the moment and understanding how excited you guys were. It was super cool to see. So Commanders fans, yes, it's a little bit corny. I don't care. It's who I am. We're going to do it anyway. Commanders fans, you guys are star number 3 for this game. Star number 2, Johnny Newton. He would have been star number 1. In fact, that fumble was going to be the play of the day if the Washington Commanders were able to seal the victory right there in that moment. Unfortunately, they weren't. So unfortunately, Johnny Newton falls down to number 2. But he ends up with his first career fumble recovery, first career sack. He also ends up with, what did he have? 3 total tackles, and he had 2 quarterback hits as well in the mix. So Johnny Newton just all over the place in this game, man. Mitch Tisler, Monumental Sports, sent out a tweet, said, maybe this defensive line is better with Johnny Newton in it than John Allen. And I think that I agree with him in the sense that that is not a outright statement. It is a, maybe this is starting to be something that we see with Johnny Newton being out there in place. Obviously, nobody is celebrating any injuries by any means. John, hopefully you're recovering very well. Star number 1, Jayden Daniels, Noah Brown. We're going to split it. We're going to give it to both of them. And it's going to happen because what happened right where my feet are standing right now. They always talk about be where your feet are. Where my feet are is where Noah Brown caught, well, it's about 20 feet, 10 feet. It keeps growing every time I say it, doesn't it? About 10 feet away from where Noah Brown caught the pass from Jayden Daniels to seal this victory. So star number 1 goes to Jayden Daniels and Noah Brown. Coming up tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, we are scheduled to meet with Dan Quinn via Zoom for our routine day after press conference. I'm going to go break down some more numbers. I'm going to watch this game again. I'm going to talk to my insiders, and we're going to get some more information out of Dan Quinn. We will come back tomorrow and talk about this victory just a little bit more, as well as an NFC East roundup, and talk about where things stand in the division. Until then, if you got questions or you got comments, all you got to do is send me a text message. To do that, all you got to do is become a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to sign up today. Multiple insiders were at the game today. I got to meet with a few of them before the game. Some of them I wasn't able to stick around long enough for downstairs before I had to get up to the press box before they got in the stadium. So I'm sorry I missed all of you guys. Really grateful for meeting the people that I was able to meet. And of course, if you're ever at a game, make sure you let me know, and I'll come down and I want to shake everybody's hand that makes this possible for me, which is all of you. So thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast in the morning. You get the Madman Tyler rolling with a little bit of NFL espresso in the afternoon. You're getting Tony Wiggins in the barbershop added to for some real NFL talk. So make sure you check out the all-new Locked On NFL. It's all new, and it's twice per day. Thanks for coming through, everydayers. Thanks for coming through every single day. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.